Okay, so we yesterday we started the first reason as to why it is that the Iker Inyan of our Veda today is simcha. And what was the reason? Quite an amazing reason. Ein lanu kayach le'inyan maridus. We will take maridus and turn it into atzvus, depression. We get depressed, and we'll pick on ourselves, we'll beat ourselves up, etc. Right? So now this does not mean, obviously, that a person should be in a state of irreverence, that he shouldn't care what he does. If a person does an avera, they have to take care of it. But how do they take care of it? They take care of it with the understanding that Akash Baruch was willing for them to come back to him, and they should do that with simcha, as opposed to sit down and break their heart. Right? That's what the Rebbe said. Because if we focus on the negative, we'll do it wrong. Right? Now, all the Rebbe said was Ein Lanu Kayach. The explanation that we gave was based on what mashpim of this generation have said since the Rebbe said this minor. A very famous minor. And obviously this part is extremely important. And then we discussed the Inyan Trachgut V'Tzayngut. We sort of did a quick synopsis of that sikha. Right? Sikha that you should all learn. Right? Lamed Aleph, Lamed Vav. I looked for a Lamed Aleph or a Lamed Vav yesterday in Zal to say, to check which one it is. I always forget. I don't know, it's one of those things that you say, oh, this time I'm going to remember, you look it up, and this time I'm going to remember, and you make yourself, and then it doesn't work. I don't know, it's one of these, it's a crazy thing. It's the first sikha in either Lamed Aleph or Lamed Vav, so it's not like I'm not going to find it, but it is annoying. I'd like to be able to say which one it is. Now I think it's probably Lamed Vav, but...
Is it with Moshe? And Para?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. The last thing we saw, that since there's Havtach the Rebbeim, so Baruch, absolutely clear that this is the way it's going to be. This is the way it is. Okay, so that was the first of the three reasons as to why it is that a Veda in our generation has to be befuma. Now, they're just going to continue with that a little bit, right? Because we said that whole story of Trachgut V'Tzayngut was based on a medical issue that someone had, and we talked about this yesterday. And the Rebbe brings that here. Ubefrat, particularly, second last line, Shemuva al zeh sipur tzemach tzedek, that it's brought regarding the story of the tzemach tzedek, shekein haya b'feil, this is what actually happened. She'amar tzemach tzedek le'echad ha'chasidim, that the tzemach tzedek said to one of the chasidim, Trachgut V'Tzayngut, v'chein haya, and thus it was, meaning Baruch Hashem, there was a happy end to the story. This is a matter of a story. When you say Maisarav, you mean a story regarding one of the Rebbeim. Generally, Maisarav just means like a story that actually happened. Ubefrat, particularly, Shemadubar Sham, that which is being spoken about there in the story that Tzemach said, Bebrias Haguf Begashmias. That's regarding physical health of the body. Shemizem Muvan, and from this it's understood, all the more so, spiritual health. Can't find it?
No, I
have I always have extras because people don't have Rahmanas on the poor trees that are Meiser Nefesh for us to learn Torah, so I always, sacrifice a few more trees for, just in case the dog ate it or something.
Oh, that's my other folder.
Oh, I'm sure you have it. Okay. So all the more so, Brias Baruchnis, right? Because obviously Brias Beguf is an important thing, and there's a mitzvah in the Shmart the Mudla Nafshe Seichem, you should guard your body, your soul, literally. It means take care of yourself very much. In other words, there's a chiyuv deraisa to make sure that you're as healthy as you can be. It doesn't mean you become obsessive, right? But that, Rav Moshe Feinstein said that if he could, he would asur smoking cigarettes. He said he can't. So,
why?
Because there's a law that you're not allowed to make a gezerah that the tzibur can't uphold. And if he said smoking cigarettes is asur, all he do is make a bunch of people do averos. So that's not the idea of rabbis, to make people do averos. Then he said, well, maybe I'll say it's asur to start. That didn't work out. So he gave up. But the idea is the idea. He's bringing the idea to show that there's such an idea that's, smoking cigarettes is an absolutely stupid thing to do. It's absolutely ridiculous. Knowing what we know now about how bad it is for you. It's an absolutely absurd thing to stick your mouth over an exhaust pipe of a car and breathe deeply. It's a very dumb thing to do. You're going to, not you, I don't think there's a smoker in the room, right? But the cigarette, I have said this in this school many times, and Baruch Hashem, once I said it, then a year later, one of the Baruchim came up to me, said, I just want you to know it's a year since I quit smoking.
Wow.
I said, what? I said, you went on a rant and cheered, and I realized I'm crazy. And we stopped smoking. To this day, I just saw him in Grand Heights, he's living in Grand Heights. Baruch Hashem. But at least he took us stopped smoking. So, generally, smoking doesn't affect a person's ability to be at their children's weddings. But there's a good chance they'll miss their grandchildren's weddings. It's pretty stupid. Now, that might seem like a long time off, but trust me, it's not. It goes fast. Our oldest is 16. Grandchild. Right? So, just, it goes fast. So, Baruch Hashem. So there's a mitzvah to take care of your body, but obviously spiritual health is more important than physical health. And sometimes we will sacrifice physical health for spiritual health. Right? A person might have to be measuring nefesh for certain things. Right? Okay. Because spiritual health is the health of your soul, which lasts forever. Physical health is simply your body. So your body's around for a while and then it disappears. Right? So again, obviously physical health is important, and Kadosh Baruch Hu told us to take care of ourselves, and Kadosh Baruch Hu also gave the permission of doctors to heal people, which itself is an interesting thing, because you might say, well, if Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you a sickness, who's this doctor to take it away? No. Pasuk in Chumash, Parshas Mishpatim, Rapeh Yirapeh, that he will heal, he will certainly heal. Chazal is saying, Nosin Rishus L'Reifim L'Rapes. It's given permission to the doctors to heal.
Not the Christian Science.
Yeah, there are people who don't believe that. They're saying they don't know that pasuk. So I mean, their position is not unreasonable. It just happens to be there's a pasuk that says the opposite. Mm-hmm. So physical health is very, very important, but physical health is temporary. Right? The soul lasts forever. So if chas v'sholom, we damage the soul, so that damage can be eternal. Whereas the damage to a physical object is temporary, as long as the object is around. Now we want it to stay around, obviously. So the story of the Tzemach Tzedek was regarding physical health. So all the more so regarding spiritual health. And when we talked outside about the Sikh of Bitochen yesterday, so we did mention that when the Rebbe brings examples, he brings examples not of making a living and not of health, but of Yiddishkeit. Trach gut v'tzayin good, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about tshuva. Trach gut v'tzayin good within the context of the understanding that you can do tshuva. Have absolute confidence in your ability to do tshuva and be tochen in your ability to do that, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you and it'll happen. We talked about it yesterday, we're not going over it again. And since this was publicized by Nasi Dareinu, the leader of our generation, which means, of course, when the Rebbe says that means the previous Rebbe, Va'ad shekvar nitpas, to such an extent that it's actually printed. And again, what that means, the Rebbe says that very, very often, that means it's not only shayach to Lubavitcher Chassidim who happen to be sitting in the Farbrengen at the time that the Rebbe talked about it, it's shayach to everybody because the Rebbe printed it. Muvan sheyesh b'zehera. Therefore, it's understood that there is an instruction l'kol echad va'achas misra. Every single Jew.
Sorry, where are we?
Fourth line on page Nun Daled, second page. Umikol zeh moving from all of this, it's understood. Okay, so that's the end of the first reason. The first reason, again, there's going to be three reasons, right? But the first reason is ein lanu kayach al zeh. The Aveda Mariris, which is a proper Aveda and a real Aveda, but Rebbe says not for our generation because we will mess it up, and our Aveda has to be b'simcha. Okay. The Neisif, now the Rebbe is going to bring a second reason. The Neisif lamavur b'geras tshuva. In addition to that, I mean, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be an easy transition from the first reason to the second reason because we're talking about the same thing. Why there has to be a Veda b'tshuva. which of course we said yesterday was tshuva ilah, the higher level of tshuva. Tshuva tata is meriris, tshuva ilah is simcha. The neisif lemavur b'gersa tshuva, in addition to that which it said in Igersa tshuva, now the Rebbe is quoting that which we had to talk about outside yesterday in order to understand the context of what the Rebbe was saying. So now the Rebbe brings the quotes from Igersa tshuva, from the Alter Rebbe. Demashikosu, that statement which says v'chatasi negdi tomi, David HaMelech says that my sin is negdi, means in front of me, simply. It's in front of me always. So what does that mean? So now, you might take that to mean, and there are many people who do take that to mean, that I should constantly be aware of my failings. Right? And yet here we're talking about the fact, and we talked about it again yesterday at length, that the Rebbe says that will not produce growth. That will produce depression. Right? If I'm constantly focused on my lacking, right? So how then David HaMelech says, "V'chatasi negdi tamid," my lacking should be in front of me at all times. So the Alter Rebbe says, it's not the Rebbe in our Maimer, it's the Alter Rebbe in Igersa tshuva. Eina mechuven liers tamid otsev nivza chas v'shalom. The intention of that pasuk is not always to be in a state of depression chas v'shalom, because I'm a lowlife and a thief. Ela negdi daika. What does negdi mean? Hainem yurachoik. It's across from me. It's opposite me. It's on the opposite side of the river, the opposite side of the room, the opposite side of the world. Where's your chait? It's over there. Why? Well, because you're not there now. Right now, what are you doing? Hopefully right now you're doing something positive. Right? And what's the proper response to an Aveira? Do a mitzvah. Sit down, rent your garments, and put ashes on your head and live the Aveira? Well, you can do that, but I mean, all you're going to do is, first of all, it's an interesting thing because it's as if you're surprised that you did an Aveira, right? And second of all, well, I understand, right now there's things that I could do that are actually of use, so why am I doing something else? Certainly it's usher to do that if you're in the middle of work. Right? Why? Well, you're getting paid by your boss to work. So you just walked into the coffee place at work and chas v'shalom, not you, Reuven. And chas v'shalom, Reuven treated someone improperly. Reuven might have said something about someone that's not proper. Okay. So Reuven has to do tshuva for that. There's no question. Okay. So when? Right now? Absolutely not. It's also to do tshuva right now for that. Why? You're getting paid to work for this guy. You're not allowed to go sit in close yourself off in a room, rent your garments, put ashes on your head, and fast for the next 6 hours. It's not what you're allowed to do. What do you have to do? You have to go back to work. Okay, so now what's, in the context of work, what's one of the ways you could do tshuva? Treat the next person you meet with love and care. Oh. Okay, that'll work. Elanegdi daika, hainu mirachoik, the Alter Rebbe says. The haksiv basrei, what does it say right after the pasuk? Shlomo, when David HaMelech says, v'chatasi negdi tamid, which is in Perek Nun Aleph in Tehillim, which is the Perek of Tshuva, a Perek where we learn many different ideas about Tshuva in Tehillim. So afterwards, what does it say? David HaMelech says, "V'tashmieni sasin v'simcha." Make heard to me joy, gladness of heart and joy. That's usually how sasin is translated. And simcha, joy. Shetekef achara yureg koten demeridus. That immediately after a small moment of bitterness, this is the Alter Rebbe, leiv nishbar v'nitke, the broken heart, same perek in Tehillim, the broken heart, leibiza elokim. The broken heart of Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't embarrass or insult. I actually heard an interesting story yesterday. They're very, very, very famous. Actually, I asked Rabbi Kleinman about him because he knew him. Kleinman grew up in Borough Park. So Rabbi Moshe Wolfson passed away yesterday. He was 99. It's a big Rav in Borough Park. Very, 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 very well thought of Rav, who was the Rav of it. Theoretically, he was the mashgiach in the huge yeshiva in Brooklyn called Torah, but he wasn't really. What he really had was he had a shul, and that shul has a number of shuls actually all over the world, sort of branches of it. And he was a mashgiach for a lot of people. They wanted him to be a rebbe. He didn't want to be a rebbe, so he was a Rav for a lot of people. Very special person, very, very special person. And over time, he became basically a chassid of the Rebbe. I mean, he wasn't official, right? Whatever that means. But he was a chassid of the Rebbe. He quoted the Rebbe all the time. He used to go down to Miami every year when he was older. New York winters were harder to take. So he would go south. And he would, so he was close to Rabbi Leibel Shapiro. Rabbi Leibel Shapiro is the Rav of the main Lubavitch Shul in Miami Beach. He's the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva in Miami Beach. And he's a very, very special Chassidish Yid. He's a Talmud Chacham, very special person. So Leibel Shapiro, he was also one of the people who wrote Likutei Sichos. When they were starting to write Likutei Sichos, he was a walker, and he and his brother, and who's still in Grand Heights, Nachum Shapiro, and a couple other people wrote down Likutei Sichos. They actually, the whole story is an amazing story because the Rebbe didn't want it written down, and they wrote it down. They gave it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe didn't really look at it. After a while, they basically, so to speak, forced the Rebbe's hand. I mean, you can't do that, but they pushed hard enough that the Rebbe agreed, and they started publishing Likutei Sichos. So Leibel Shapiro used to talk to Moshe Wolfson a lot. And at one point, I saw a video of the story yesterday because he passed away. Leibel Shapiro said at one point he asked Moshe Shapiro, "How did you become a chassid of the Rebbe? What happened? Like, what was the makah b'patish? What was that which flipped the switch that you basically became a chassid of the Rebbe?" So he said, "Well, I was in Eretz Yisrael, and I was close to the Rebbe. I used to go for dollars, and I would consult with the Rebbe. But I was in Eretz Yisrael, and we were staying in some apartment in Yerushalayim, and next to the apartment was an empty shul, a churva, not the churva in the old city, just a churva, an empty shul. It wasn't being used. No one was in the shul. And every night I used to go into that shul to say Kriya Shema Shalomita. Right? And we had a sick grandson. So I poured out my heart to HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single night. And one of the lines we say in Kriya Shema Shalomita is Lev Nishma V'Nitka. Lev Nishma V'Nitka. Lebiza Elokim. So I said that pasuk over and over and over again with tears, crying for my grandson. My broken heart shouldn't be ignored by the Eibishter, and should hear my broken heart and bring over foolish shalom to my grandson. Fine. No one knew. I went there because I didn't want my wife to hear me crying. No one knew where I was. No one heard me. That's why I went there, and I was very careful that not a soul heard me. We came back to America, so I went to the Rebbe for dollars. I asked the Rebbe for a bracha for our grandson. And the Rebbe looked at me and said, Leiv nishbar v'nidka lebiza elokim. A broken heart, God doesn't ignore. Davening with that will help your grandson. He said, someone heard me. I'm sure God heard me, but the Rebbe also heard me. That's when I became a chassid of the Rebbe.
Rabbi Olson said this?
Yeah. He said, if the Rebbe knows what I'm saying in some room in Yerushalayim where no one in this world is hearing me, then the Rebbe is not in this world, he's in another place. That's when I became a chassid. That's what he told Leibel Shapiro. So he just passed away at 99. If you want, the Rabbi Kleinman should have some stories about him. It's very interesting. I don't know whether he does. I asked him a little yesterday if he knew. We said everybody knew it. But, so Leiv Nishbar V'Nishbar. After the pasuk of Leiv Nishbar V'Nishbar, Nidka, which is the broken heart, that's the merirus, the bitterness, which until this mimer was an integral part of tshuva. But after that, and interesting enough, the Alter Rebbe says, Rege Kotan, only a small moment of merirus. What's next? Tashmeni Sasim V'Simcha, David Melech says. Make heard to me joy. Meaning there'll be a moment of the broken heart and then tremendous joy. Shetekef achrei rega kotan the merirus leiv nishbar v'nidka tzarech liyesh. There must be shleimus asasim v'simcha. The complete joy and gladness of heart. Ad, to such an extent, David, David, the one who wrote the songs of the Jewish people, Eimer al zeh, he says about this, Tashmei Sasim Simcha. Simcha. Tshuva ultimately comes from Simcha. Well, we have to talk about Simcha a little bit, but first we have to see what the Rebbe keeps saying, how necessary it is. To know what it is also, we'll try to figure that out. The Rebbe's not going to talk about that here. It's not the purpose of the mind. Furthermore, it's mentioned in Gersa Tshuva, and this is really the focal point of the second answer. The second reason why in our generation tshuva misimcha is what's necessary. Tshuva misech meridus hi tshuva tata, as we talked about yesterday, it's lower level tshuva. But tshuva misech simcha, and tshuva that's coming from simcha, hi tshuva ilah, is upper levels simcha. V'hare b'doreinu zeh, in our generation, be'ikvis of the Mashiach, on the heels of Mashiach, Achrei kol hatzares, after all of the trials, troubles, and tribulations, v'yisurim, the afflictions, v'chula, that the Jewish people have gone through over the last 2,000 years of Golus. Asher yisurim memarakim, yisurim mevarim, yisurim mezachakim, memeremimim. Yisurim memarakim means to cleanse. Yisurim mevarim, rectify. Yisurim mezachakim, purify. Memeremimim, and elevate. All the Jewish people, every Jew, are in the highest level imaginable. And therefore, their shayach means in this context that it's relevant to them. Tshuva ilah, upper level tshuva daika, shimisich. In other words, even though it's true that the basic path of tshuva starts with tshuva tata and then goes to tshuva ilah, and tshuva tata is tshuva mimariris, bitterness, and tshuva ilah is tshuva misimcha, and you start by breaking your heart, even though it might only be a rega kotan, but there still has to be a rega kotan of breaking my heart, and then connecting to the Eibishter with simcha afterwards. That's the general mode of tshuva. That was up until our generation. Well, why? Well, because a person that was on a lower level and had to start with the lower level of tshuva and then go to the higher level of tshuva. But in our generation, the Rebbe says, straight to the higher level of tshuva because the Jews are on such a high level. After all the Yidden have been through all these years of Golus, the Yidden are open to tshuva ilah right away and don't have to go through the preliminary path of tshuva tata. That's what the Rebbe just said about the Jews of our generation. You might be thinking, well, I thought we're the lowest of the low. Guess not. Okay. Another example of the same thing in our generation is similar to what we were talking about yesterday. When the Rebbe was talking about education and how to educate people and how to educate ourselves. What's the proper means in our generation as opposed to previous generations? We said, his chazkus and his edidus yiseda. Okay, encouragement. People talking to so-called, people saying, most people, not all. There's still a few left. But most people who are involved in trying to get Jews closer to Yiddishkeit. What do they talk about? The fear of hell or the beauty of Torah mitzvahs? The beauty of Torah mitzvahs. That's what they talk about. Right? Talking to college campus about the fact that if you keep living this way, you're all going to go to Gehenna and burn. They'll look at you like you're off your rocker, and they'll go to. I mean, if they want to hear that, there's people on campus who might tell them that, but even, right? Probably not. Because when we start with Yidden, everybody talks about good stuff. It might be that later on, the people who get in the door, so some people will start talking about the fires of Gehenna once they think they're ready for it. Okay. In Lubavitch, you're not going to find that. By Hasidim, you're not going to find that at all. Okay. Even once they're in the door. Okay. But certainly no one is going to talk that way to get someone in the door. Why? It's just not relevant. No one can relate to it. Why? Well, to put it in Torah terms, it used to be, and this is still, there's no question that there's an aspect of this in our Aveda, and we have to, it's something that's talked about in Chassidus all the time, and the Rebbe talks about it. It's not something that's disappeared. Two different levels of Aveda, Yira and Ahava, right? Awe and love. And there's no question that Reishis Aveda, the beginning of Aveda, is Yira. Awe. Kabbalah soul, accepting upon oneself the yoke of heaven, doing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants because he wants it, not because it speaks to me, not because it resonates, not because I love it, not because I understand it, because the Eibishter wants it done. And a person who's doing Torah and mitzvahs, but is doing it not for that reason, and that's not the basis of their Aveda, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants this done, and the basis of their Aveda is because this elevates me and makes me feel good and gives meaning to my life, etc. So that's all great, that's good, that's wonderful, but that has nothing to do with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not called Aveda. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's still good. But if I'm keeping Shabbos because Shabbos speaks to me, so then what's that got to do with God? That has to do with me. That means I'm probably going to not do other things so seriously that don't speak to me. Why? Well, because this is about what speaks to me and not about what God said to me. Okay, so Reishis Aveda B'Ikar V'Sharsha, 41st chapter in Tanya, which we say every day before davening. Right? There's such a minhag is to recite that, which generally people memorize it and say it to themselves every day before davening. One year, one of the shluchim here in Mayanot made a little card with a Mayanot card with the 41st parak of Tanya on it, right? And what does the 41st parak of Tanya talk about? Reishis Aveda B'Ikar V'Sharsha is what? Yira. Afal Pi, even though there's Av and there's Yira, right? There's both levels, and Av is a higher level, but still it starts with Yira. There's no question. It starts with Yira. Absolutely. But, interestingly enough, if you're talking to other Jews who aren't on the level yet of Kabbalah soul, they haven't made a commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu yet, what are you talking about? Av. I'm not talking about Yira. I'm talking about Av. Why? Well, because the neshamas are on a level that can relate to Av. The neshamas are on a higher level and can appreciate the notion of Avos Hashem. They might have a hard time with Yiras Hashem. That's going to be a real Aveda for them. Why do you do what the Eibishter said? Because he said, Zeh, has nothing to do with you. Take yourself out of the equation. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your religiosity. It has nothing to do with your elevation. It has nothing to do with your perfection and your self-growth. Nothing to do with that. Just do it because God said so. That's what a mitzvah is about. Would I like to also express my love for Kadosh Baruch Hu in the context of that mitzvah? I'd love to, and I want to get to that place, absolutely. But it's not about me being better, and it's not about me being loftier, and it's not about me being spiritual. That's not what it's about. It's about God getting what God wants. Okay. It's going to take a while for a person to get to that point and appreciate that. At the beginning, what are they probably going to do? They're probably going to want to express a certain love of Kadosh Baruch Hu, which they might even have. I don't know. You can't check the kishkas of people. Okay. So people in this generation, isn't enough. We focus on love first. Focus on the beauty of mitzvahs first. Not the fires of Gehenna. Same general idea. In the old days, now Chassidus brought about a great change in this in the early generations of Chassidus also. It's not just the Rebbe in our generation. Chalal Chassidus tried to focus very, very much on the positive and diminish the focus on the negative. And the famous Magidim, the famous itinerant preachers, I think that's how they usually call them, who went around from town to town trying to arouse the Jews to do tshuva, so they generally would try to scare the living daylights out of everybody. And the Chassidim were, trying to fight that reality. Okay. Maybe it's a Berditchev, once someone came to Berditchev and gave a speech in the shul and got everybody crying and scared, etc. And after he finished his speech, so Levi Yitzchak looked up to the Eibush and said, "HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this man's pain and suffering is simply a function of the fact that he has no money and he has to marry off some of his daughters and he's in pain, and so he's expressing his pain through the drushes that he gives, but so please be merciful with him." What was his response to this speech? The fire and brimstone. So that's generally that's just not the derech of Chassidus B'chal, but Chassidus is all about the tailor-made Torah for our generation. Why was Chassidus revealed in these generations? These generations were ready for Mashiach, for Mashiach, yes, but for Chassidus. Torah is a Mashiach. That's what Chassidus is. That's what Baal Shem Tov said. Okay. So the Rebbe says, In our generation, after all of the tsuras the Yidden have gone through, the Yidden have been elevated and purified to a higher level, and therefore what? Basically, to say it in rather crass terms, this is what the Rebbe is saying, the Yidden can skip the initial step of tshuva tatah and go straight to tshuva imo. Wow. Unbelievable. I can't say things like that. The Rebbe can. You and I can't. Oh. Okay, that's the second reason. First reason, in lanu koyach. Second reason, we're on such a high level. Now, if you think about those two reasons, which hopefully you are, right, they seem to contradict. The first reason is we don't have the koyach for the Aveda Mariris. Why? Because we're so completely focused on self, we'll just become depressed. Because it's all about me. If it's about, as we talked about yesterday, if it's about my nefesh, about nefesh elokis, so then the Aveda bitterness works, because I'm embittered by virtue of the fact that I've taken my nefesh elokis farther from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That pains me. And the pain is the pain of the nefesh elokis. Not that I'm no good. Okay. But what am I going to do with that? I'm going to turn it into I'm no good. Feel sorry for myself and finish the chocolate. Okay. So that seems to be that as a result of our yeshus, as a result of our focus on self, we're not going to do a good job in Meribus. Okay. The second reason is we're on such a high level that we can go straight to Aveda B'Simcha. Doesn't it? I mean, it seems somewhat contradictory that the first reason is I'm on such a low level that I won't do the Aveda properly. It'll be counterproductive because I'm just so focused on self. And the second reason is that because we're in such a lofty place that we can skip the first step, so to speak. It's really quite astounding. So one of the answers that's given to that is really an amazing answer. Throw it out. And it's very real, and it's also just so fascinating sociologically, so to speak, to look around at the world. According to this mimer, what is our main Aveda? One word answer. Simcha. That's the right? Okay, therefore, what's the biggest klipa in our generation?
That's it.
The opposite of simcha. That's why we can't do Meribus. Since, now, that, you say, well, it's the cart and horse, because that's the reason. Well, no, but there are other reasons also. We've seen the second, we're about to see the third. Right? But since the Ikar Aveda of our generation is Simcha, then what's going to be the Klipa of our generation? Hepach Simcha, the opposite of Simcha. And it is rather interesting that you look around, this is the sociological part of it, right? You look around at the world, and you see people who have a life that is so immeasurably better than the life that just about anybody who ever walked on this little ball called Earth had. Immeasurably. In Gashmias, certainly. But also, in Ruchnias, I understand that Ruchnias spirituality depends a lot on me, but in terms of the opportunities I have in Ruchnias, it's just beyond belief. The Chassid 200 years ago wanted to learn a mimer. Well, what did he do? Maybe there was a copy of something around somewhere in the shul. You want to learn a mimer? Oh, it's over there. Right? Take out your phone, open up Mufteach, and every Sikha or mimer that I've ever said is right there. What year do you want? What month do you want? Right? You want something a little more real than a piece of plastic? Okay, go to Zal. Now, I understand we haven't unpacked all the boxes, but you'll find a mimer from all the Rebbeim. You want to look up Halacha? Look in Shulchan Aruch, it's there. How many copies of Shulchan Aruch are down there? How many people had a Talmud Bavli in their house 600 years ago, before the printing press? Came out no one. Who had a Talmud Bavli now? Could you have a Talmud Bavli now? It meant you had to be a fabulously wealthy person to scribe, right? A Talmud Bavli for you. So you might have Baba Basra, you might have Baba Metzia. Not printed nicely with Rashi and Taisus on the side and a bunch of stuff in the back. And if you want, you can also look at our scroll to figure out what it means. So the Ruchni is also amazing. What, Gashmis? Our Gashmis is better than the Gashmis of Louis XIV, King of France. Your Gashmis is 5 times as good as his. No question. Right? A little hot today. Switch it. Just find the right temperature. A little schwitzy, you walked outside. Okay, there's a room. And now all of you have your own. There's a little room in your dorm room. This is a dorm, right? Not a house. This is a dorm where, theoretically you should be happy if you have a mattress on the floor and a hook on the wall. No. Right? I have my own little room, and in that room there's these buttons, and I fiddle with the buttons, and the water comes out of the wall exactly the temperature I wanted within 5 minutes after walking in from outside where I was just pushing, schwitzing because it was so hot. I feel like $1,000,000. And I splash on a little of that smelly stuff. And, great. Gashmi is unbelievable. Incredible. And everybody's walking around depressed. So everybody's so upset about it. God's not good to you. God's better to you than he's been to anybody for the last 5,000 years. Who has it better than you? Oh, but Elon Musk has a Lexus. He probably doesn't. He probably has one of his cars, right? Whatever. He's richer than me, so I'm depressed. So we're all morons if that's how we live. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? Right? Oh, what's wrong with us? That's the Iker Klipa of this generation. Right? And I'm talking about people who theoretically have a chance to be besimcha because they actually are learning something about the truth. There's all these other people out there who seem to be extremely upset. About what? I don't know, but they're just miserable. Happy people don't put on keffiyahs and start demonstrating for Nazis. Happy people just don't do that. Oh, the plight of the poor Palestinian. Oh, Assad killed 500,000 Palestinians in the last 10 years. They couldn't care less. It's the last thing they care about. No one could give a damn about the Palestinians. What do they give a damn about? Their own misery. And who can always be the focus of your own misery? Jews. I'll express my misery by bashing Jews. Okay, say that. What do they say? We're the canary in the coal mine. You can always tell where society is at relative to their relationship with their Jews. How miserable these people are. These Pashut miserable. And it doesn't even before us, right? All those people tearing down Minnesota and burning, during George Floyd time, right? Happy people don't do that. Only miserable people do that. These people are miserable. Nebuch, I don't know. Happy in their misery. They're miserable. They're just really unhappy. Why? Okay, one thing is you have to look at them and tell them, why don't you get a life and get it together and do something productive and you'll probably be happy. Okay, there's definitely that. But also because the klipa of our generation is atzvus. Why? Because the avoid of our generation is simcha. And what's simcha? Simcha is all about gilui, revelation. When you see elokus in the reality around you, you're besimcha. Even if that reality is not necessarily in line with what you want to happen. But if you see elokus, then you're besimcha. And if you can't see elokus, then it's hit and miss. If your team wins, you're happy. If your team loses, you're miserable. Whatever the team is, it can be a baseball team or a stock on the market, it doesn't matter, whatever. Because then I'm at the mercy of all these other things. But if I actually am a person who can bring about a revelation of Elokus in my life, so then I'm a person who can see or can see light, can see radiance everywhere. That doesn't mean everything works the way we want it to work, does it? Certainly the last 6-7 months in this country, we've been going through a pretty difficult time. Very painful. Painful from a number of points of view. Painful in the fact that the simple, most obvious pain is there's Jews in pain because they've lost loved ones. There's a lot of Jews in pain in this country right now. And that's painful. Also, you see that, for a little while they kept their head low, but now the people in this country who are just pushing evil, they're just evil people. It's frightening because they're Jews. They're just evil people. They're trying to bring the place down. So they've raised their head again. They were quiet for 6 months, but now they're starting up with their same noise that they were making 6 months ago, or before the war. It's frightening. It's just frightening to see this happen. The Jews acting this way. It's unbelievable. It's very painful. Okay. Somehow, what the person who's aware of Elokus, what does he, when he sees that, what has to be his response? This is all ultimately part of a process. It's clearly, this is not something boring and mundane. This is big. And anything big means you can take the energy of that big thing and turn it into positivity and bring Mashiach. Little things, okay, say there's everyday life. This is big. This is big. And it's making a very, very powerful impression on a lot of Yidden in this country. Baruch Hashem, a lot of Yidden have woken up. A lot of Yidden in Chutz La'aretz have woken up. So, wow, they still hate us. Wow. Unbelievable. So either I'm going to hide my Judaism or I'm going to say, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm proud. You hate us. People are off the wall. People are just pushing evil people. I can't relate to you. Okay, and I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, good. That might arouse a little, nothing like anti-Semites to arouse the Jewishness in Jews. Best friend of the Jew is always the anti-Semite, right? What can you do? Sometimes it takes that. Right? So you take that energy, when you see Elokus and things, you have to figure out how to take that energy and turn it into something positive. As negative as the energy is, see it and somehow, not just see it, but use it in your own Aveda for something positive. So rouse in each and every one of us a greater appreciation of the fact that now is a time, perhaps more than any time in the recent past, that we can do that which is necessary to flip the scales and bring Mashiach. The Eibishter is pushing our buttons. No. As I was having my cup of orange juice this morning, so I read the headlines in the Israeli news, Arutz Arba'asrei, which is, you can read it without feeling ill. So he must have made a big speech yesterday, because they were like, in the news they have those little boxes of like a little picture and then a...
It was the only speech she's made since the war started. It was the first time he gave a public interview.
When?
Yesterday.
Oh, okay. So there were like 8 or 10 little quotes from Netanyahu, and one of them was, who knows how many more chances God is going to give us to do what we have to do.
That's what Bibi said?
What?
Why isn't anybody taking the opportunity
I
to
don't
do
think
it?
that's, just stop with your nonsense.
Why is it? You brought it up.
I brought it up because, not because I'm interested in discussing here something I have nothing to do with. That's irrelevant. I'm going to vent and feel better about myself because I disagree with him. Yay me! Irrelevant. What can I do that makes a difference? That's relevant. I don't like how the government is acting. So wait until you get to vote. But then it's also irrelevant. I voted a lot of times in this country. It's not where our salvation lies. Deciding that I know how to run a war better than the government. Which I might, I don't know. Right? I don't know. But that's not. I don't have a lot of experience fighting wars. I was in an army. Same army that's fighting this war. I was a pretty useless soldier. If it were dependent on me, we'd lose. It's dependent on him. You want Bibi to make the right decisions? Do a few more mitzvahs. Bibi will make the right decisions. He was just a shaliach of the Eibishter to make things happen. If the Eibishter wants them to happen, they'll happen. Who's ultimately responsible to make them happen? You and me. By doing the right thing. Then we can make a difference. Right? The joke they say, but it's not a joke. It really matters, right? That the husband and wife are talking, and the husband says that he makes all the big decisions, and his wife makes the little decisions. He makes all the big decisions. How are we going to win the war in Gaza? How are we going to take care of Gaza after the war? What we should do about Hezbollah? How can we, somehow help save America from itself? What should we do about Iran? All those big decisions that the husband makes. The little decisions the wife makes. What neighborhood should we live in? What school should we send our kids to? What shul should we daven in? The little stuff. That my wife thinks. I take care of the big stuff. That's the joke Jews have been telling for centuries. It matters what I think about what we should do relative to Iran. One thing that Gush Katif taught us all. What you and I think is irrelevant, they couldn't care less. What you and I do is relevant. But what you and I think, there were 50,000, 100,000 of us on the street all the time. I was one of them, we were all out there. Right, trying to stop the whole, leaving Gush Katif, giving Gaza to these heathens. Right? Everybody was out there on the street. Hundreds of thousands of people. They couldn't care less. Okay, so now, that's when I stopped reading the news. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether I know what's going on. I don't know, it's irrelevant. Now you look, I stopped with this war because I just couldn't stand seeing, who Tyler Persoon, which means we're allowed to pronounce that so-and-so has died. It's just too much to take. Every now and then you look to see, okay, what's going on. You want entertainment? Okay, read American news. And you're entertained. Donald Trump is one of the most entertaining people that's shown up on the public scene for a while. Just very entertaining. The whole thing is entertaining. Trump-Hillary was one of the most entertaining things imaginable. It was incredible watching the whole thing unfold. It had a surprise ending also, which was, it was a good novel. Like you didn't expect the end, and all of a sudden, whoa, look at that. Okay. So it was fun to watch. It was entertaining. But, and it's nice sometimes. It depends who you like and who you don't like, but sometimes the good guys win and sometimes the good guys lose, and it's nice when the good guys win. Okay, but bottom line, we have to do what we have to do. And what can we do? Tshuva is simcha. And what's simcha? Sing Elokusin things. Right? Sing Elokusin what's going on. Also sing Elokusin what's going on in the world at large. But that it's a hizdamnut, that it's an opportunity for you and I to do something positive because it might very well be an auspicious time. Okay, and there's no question there's been an incredible arousal for good things in this country, unbelievable things. And there's always going to be forces that are going to try to destroy that. It's always the case. Until Mashiach comes, that will just be the way. There's always going to be forces of Klippa that are trying to be equal to the forces of Kedusha. That's exactly how we explain what we just said, right? Why the first reason and the second reason seem to contradict, right? That the deRava, since Simcha is the Ikar Aveda, so then the Klippa of our generation is Atzvus. We have 2 minutes. Let's go a little further. We'll start to see the next answer, the third answer. So the Rebbe says that we're shayach to tshuva ilah. It's amazing. It's amazing. V'yesh lo hosik. The Rebbe said about our generation, there isn't a Jew in our generation who hasn't had thoughts of tshuva. The Rebbe said about our generation. Okay. You might think otherwise, say that. Honestly, I'll go with the Rebbe over you. I trust him more than I trust me or you. Right? How does he know that? I don't know. But he's probably the same way that he knows that Moshe Wolfson was in some shul in Yerushalayim saying over the pasuk Leiv Nishbar v'Nidke over and over with a broken heart that only one person walking around in Elam Hazeh knew. He was sitting in an office in Brooklyn. How did he know? I don't know. It's not our job to know how the Rebbe knows what the Rebbe knows. It's not our job. You don't understand. Remember Rabbi Groner, I was sitting at a Shabbos meal with Rabbi Groner exactly a year after Gimel Tammuz, and some businessman in Vancouver who was sitting at the table, who was in Chabad House in Vancouver, so the supporters of Chabad House were at Friday night meal. One of them asked, and these are people who are wonderful people, amazing people, support all sorts of good stuff, but I mean their Jewish education is, pretty lacking. So they asked Rabbi Groner what the Lubavitcher Rebbe was really like. So I just happened to be sitting right next to Rabbi Groner. So he got very choked up. This is a year after Gimel Tammuz. Got very choked up. And he said an amazing thing. He said, I was next to the Rebbe for many hours every day for over 45 years. Because Rabbi Groner was the Rebbe's secretary before the Rebbe became Rebbe. When Rabbi Groner was a bocher, the Rebbe asked him to start working for him.
Wow.
So start helping him. So I was next to the Rebbe for many hours, many days, for every day for over 45 years. He said an amazing line. He said, I never understood what was going on the other side of those eyes. I just did what I was told. Never understood what was really going on. That's why Rabbi Groner was a chassid. A mazkir, someone that close to the Rebbe might become someone who thinks that he actually knows what's going on, right? Because he's so close to the plate, so to speak. Rabbi Groner stayed a chassid. He never understood. He did what he was told to do. He saw him, a lot of stuff. But let's just a couple. I want to finish with the Rebbe speaking, not me, and then we'll pick up tomorrow. The third reason, al pia mavur b'geres tshuva sham, based on that which is explaining in geres tshuva sham, she'inyan tshuva tata miteich meridus. This notion of lower level tshuva miteich meridus. So we said it was a rega kotan. The Alter Rebbe said it was just one moment. So then, when is it that we take time to break our hearts in order to then reach the next state of tshuva? So the Alter Rebbe says, "Hu pam achas b'shavuos, once a week, lifnei yom Shabbos, before Shabbos, hainu b'leil shishi." Leil shishi is the night of Yom Shishi, which means Thursday night. That's Leil shishi, because Friday night's Leil Shabbos, right? Leil shishi. Thursday night's always called in by Jews Leil shishi. It's Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Leil shishi is when we sit and make the cheshbon. Okay. So we'll see this in detail tomorrow, but just see what the Rebbe says the next line. We're now in the 6th millennium, close to its end. Near the end of the day of the 6th day. Not only the day, not the night. Not only are we in the day of Yom Shishi, we're near its end. Now, what was the Rebbe about to explain to us? In a few lines, and we'll see the what. 6,000 years of the world's history, 7th millennium called Immerse Mashiach. Right? Each of those 1,000-year period relates to one day of the week, 6 days of the week, 7th day is Shabbos, Yom Shekula Shabbos is Mashiach. So where are we? So we are in the 785th year of 84th, I understand it's 85th year though, right? Of the 6th millennium. Okay. So Yom Rishon is until the year 999, and then 1,000 is the beginning of second day. So let's say 1,001 just to make it easy, right? So 1,001 to 1,002 to 2,000 is day 2. 2,001 to 3,000 is day 3. 3,001 to 4,000 is day 4. 4,001 to 5,000 is day 5. Day 6 starts at 5,001. Okay, that's now where does the Jewish day start? Night. Starts with the night, doesn't start with the day, right? Erev Vaveka. Okay. So the first 500 years of this millennium are the night of, or Thursday night. What happened in the year 5500? 5498 to be exact.
The sun rose.
The sun rose. How'd the sun rise? Baal Shem Tov was born. Sunrise, 5500. All right, what's that in usher in? Erev Shabbos, preparation for Mashiach. All right. What's, and this is what we talked about a lot in Tafshin Nun, 5750. The Rebbe was talking about it here already in 5746, but in 5750, the Rebbe talked about this not every week. In the Fervent, the Rebbe would talk about it. What's 5750? Midday. It's midday Friday. Friday starts at 5500. Midday Friday is 5750. Okay. What are you thinking about from 12:30 on Friday? It's the only thing you're thinking about.
Shabbos is coming. I gotta go.
Shabbos. What aren't you thinking about? What would I do this week? What did I accomplish? What did that's not where you are. When might you have been thinking about that? Last night. Last night, Thursday night. Absolutely. Make a cheshbon nefesh. What did I do this week? What did I accomplish? How can I do it better next week? Etc. Etc. Even in that, I'm not necessarily breaking my heart about what I messed up, but rather making positive resolutions about how I can do better next week. Okay, because that's a chassidus cheshbon nefesh. I'm not beating myself up because I didn't do something. Figuring out how the fact that I didn't do it can help me make sure that next time I will do it. Okay, but that's all last night. Daybreak Friday, worried about Shabbos. Worried, thinking about Shabbos. Midday Friday, that's all you're worried about. And as a matter of fact, the Rabbi doesn't say this in the Bible, but it is interesting. Anybody who's ever hung around a Jewish home, what's the craziest time in every Jewish home? Push it bedlam.
Right before Shabbos.
Friday afternoon, it's just push it bedlam. It's crazy.
Right after what?
Shabbos afternoon. Yeah, Friday afternoon, so it's just crazy. Push it crazy. Get in the shower. Wait, you didn't do the floor? Do the floor. Whose laundry is this? Why didn't you put it in the laundry? You need this for Shabbos. How are we going to get this ready for Shabbos now? Right? Oh, it's like balagan. Now some houses, I don't know, they give their kids drugs and everybody's, calm and cool and collected and each kid does what they're supposed to do and they're all waiting in a line. I don't know. But most houses are like pretty labor-dick. Look around. Sure looks like Erev Shabbos out there. Craziness. Right? But what are you thinking about Erev Shabbos? Preparing for Shabbos. What Shabbos? Mashiach. Right? So what aren't you doing? You're not worrying about what happened in your business on Tuesday. Might there be a time to worry about what's happening in your business on Tuesday? 100%. Might be Thursday afternoon, and this is probably business you can do it Thursday afternoon. Thursday afternoon, you get everybody in the office together and say, let's sit down and work out how next week can be a better week than this week. Okay. What did we accomplish this week? Good. What didn't we accomplish that we'd like to? This. Good. How can we figure out how to accomplish that next week? Good. Great. Not where do we mess up A, B, C, D. We don't have to, that's the way you necessarily have to do it. You have to find the mistakes, 100%. But the mistakes are all in order to learn how to make sure that the next time I don't make the mistake. That's how you run a business. So that's how we should run our lives. The guy runs, Thursday afternoon, they close all the stores and everybody rips their clothes because on Tuesday they had a sale and they forgot to do, and the sale didn't go as well, so everybody, they closed the store for 3 days in mourning. It's not how you run a business. We made a mistake, guys. Okay, how do we make sure that next time we have the sale, we don't make that mistake? That's all they're talking about in that meeting. That's all they care about. If there's one guy responsible and he really blew it, so maybe he's gone. Okay, that might happen also. He might, but generally, what are they doing in that meeting? They figure out how to not make the mistake again. That's all. I mean, that's a real business. Why? Because making money counts. This is just my own spirituality, so I can do whatever I want and beat myself up, and I feel good because it's all about God and it's about me beating myself up to be more religious. No, it isn't. It's about me beating myself up because I like to focus on me. I want this to be about me. Well, it's not about me, it's about God. So stop beating myself up and go do things for God. Hard. I don't know. Easier to talk about than do, that's for sure. We'll see the end of the third answer tomorrow.